Um, well, so welcome everybody. We're going to get started with our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a series of questions to kind of kick us off because we know that inevitably when you're trying to get together online, there's a little bit of lag time as people try to figure out how to get onto the session. And we were thinking it would be a chance for us to kind of find out what we're thinking so far in relation to the topics that we're doing. So I'm Laura Roop, and I'm the director of the Western Pennsylvania Writing Project. And I'm here with...
I'm B. Dias. I'm with the Create Lab at CMU.
I'm Michelle King, learning instigator, local troublemaker.
And just give us a yell if you can't hear us very well. We're sharing one mic so that we can be in the same place without having echoes.
And I'm just wondering, when you look at what people have started to put down about techno-optimism and techno-pessimism, anybody have any observations that they'd like to make or additional comments about the opening, the techno-optimists, techno-pessimists, and even the issue of screen names? Any thoughts that come to mind or comments you'd like to make?
I wrote that I'm fairly pessimistic, but I would more describe myself as a techno critic at this point. Trying to kind of pause and say, do we really need the technology, or are we trying to solve some problem mechanically that shouldn't be solved mechanically? Yes.
I noticed that nobody went to the far side of the pessimist, unless I'm reading it wrong. Maybe that's because that's our group here, right? But it's interesting.
That's the point.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you would have asked me a year ago, I would have been there. Disempowered techno-fatalist. And I think over time, learning more and more about where I actually, just as an individual citizen, has some agency, and believing that I, as well as others who may not see themselves as part of the AI conversation, really finding entry points where we can actually have public discourse around this topic and why it's necessary for each and every one of us to.
I think that's a problem for me. I'm going to just go ahead and dive in here if I could. I guess I've always, I didn't put myself all the way down at the pessimistic end because I do think there's some good things that are happening, and some of those articles. But that 5-minute videotape, for example, that I don't like learning from videotapes. And basically, what I got out of that was just a bunch of language thrown at me, and not enough time to ask questions, and a lot of stuff. So it was that video bothered me, and then I read the agitprop piece, and there was, I can't quote it now because I'm not that good, but there's a passage in the agitprop piece that perfectly describes that video for me anyway. And I guess if I could sum it all up, I hesitate to join into this discussion because I have never been able to get past the sneaking suspicion that there is no there, that this is an emperor's new clothes kind of thing, and we're all just looking for something that's not really there. Is that far enough? I guess that's.
And thank you everybody for coming tonight.
So can I jump in here? I'm Tom Fanning from Western Massachusetts, and I've been working with technology with K through 8 kids since 1998, and there's a lot of there. They love using technology, and you can trick them into doing a lot of academic work if you kind of design the activities just the right way. I think that the problem I see with the social world going with technology versus the educational world is the educational world is lagging behind public schools as far as technology goes are lagging behind in technology compared to the way that students use technology on their own.
I do think that last point is very important. Students are immersed in lives of technological contact. That's where they come from. I know, I think it was James Paul G who said that he overheard a fifth grader say when he goes to school, he has to power down. And we don't exactly want them to feel that way, but I don't think we want to give over, something like the humanity of schooling, or the teaching to them that there is more than the technology they walked into the room with. On the ominous side, I'm Richard, by the way, from Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, but to relate to the gentleman who was sort of talking about the ominous side of technology, I was having a chat with a friend not too long ago, and we talked about what has happened to you when you start to use Alexa, and our mutual conclusion was the best case scenario is they're using all the data in your life for commercial purposes. And the worst case scenario, you hardly want to think about what they can do to you once they have all of the data in your life, and all of the observation capacities that they acquire. I realize that's veering off of the educational situation, and I'm actually very interested to hear. I don't know how it can work in this setting, but I am really interested to hear about the successful use of technology in education, as you were implying.
Well, today at my elementary school at Pelham, Mass, our after-school club is the school newspaper that we create using Google Slides and PowerPoint. Today we printed 200 copies of an 8-page newspaper, totally written and laid out, printed and disseminated by students in grades 3 through 6. And when you see kids working with technology, we just lay out instruction, you sit back and watch them work and tell them to pick up the popcorn on the floor, and they do all the rest of the work. It is inspiring and it's fun.
I see.
They really, really appreciate the opportunity to do work like that.
Yeah, I see. So that's allowing them access to current technology for purposes of doing an authentic project, such as putting out a newspaper.
Yes, yes.
Right. Yeah, I love that. But to me, that is technology in the support of human endeavors, in support of authentic human endeavors, rather than technology transforming schooling, so to speak.
I wanted to start. Thank you, everybody, for engaging in that conversation. That was kind of our entry point into trying to get a sense of where everybody was and how they're feeling about technology, particularly after watching the video and reading the 2 articles. We wanted to first give you a little background about how we even came to this space, and I'll hand it over to Laura to talk about our partnership and how we went down this path.
And I'll just
You
say,
wanna talk this way?
yeah, I was going to say, so I'm the director of this writing project site in Western Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh. And it happens that the University of Pittsburgh and the Carnegie Mellon University are right next to each other. And this is a town where really interesting things are going on in relation to technology. And so I have come to this site, and already when I arrived, there were relationships between the Create Lab at Carnegie Mellon and the writing project. So we had collaborated on projects like Hear Me 101, which was a documentary filmmaking project based on the issues that young people had identified in their communities. And there were other kinds of projects. And so we began to realize we'd worked together, we'd encountered each other, and we were like meeting informally and formally over the course of almost 10 years. And so we have continued to work together, and we're trying to figure out a learning space between where could we do something that would really answer some of our questions. And one of the questions was, well, could we work a little bit on artificial intelligence, because, I'd like to learn whether there are any implications for teaching and learning for classroom teachers, for pre-service teachers. And then let's hear a little bit about the Create Lab,
Sure.
about what it is.
So for those of you who don't know, the Create Lab, it's a long acronym actually. It stands for Community Robotics Education and Technology Empowerment. It took me about 3 years to memorize that fully. But we're a lab that's based at the Robotics Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. But a lot of the work we do doesn't match any traditional robotics work. The goal of the lab, what we aspire to do, is to start with relationships. So we worked really hard to build partnerships and maintain those partnerships and allow the partnerships to lead the way to developing innovative technology, but also innovative practices around technology that's existing. So I think Jess Kaminski is also on this call. So she and I work together closely as part of the outreach team. And our goal is really to begin these partnerships that we've been in partnership with the Writing Project for over 10 years now. And that type of long-term partnership can open the way to meaningful technology and also meaningful grappling with what technology's purpose is in our communities. So this is kind of the pathway we've been taking. And so that's how we landed on idea of talking about AI, because it's the new terminology around technology, but the conversations are very similar, regardless of what the technology is. It's still grappling with how does technology fit in with humanity, and what do we give up when we adopt technology, and what do we get from adopting technology? Yeah, you want to say anything?
I think it also points to kind of an evolving ideas about how we think about technology, and I think even the work about thinking about fluency as a path, as we have these new tools, and also where we arrive now, which is to look at the ethics of this work. And I often feel like we have, that's why we kind of put a range of techno-optimism to, techno-pessimism, because I also don't think we've asked why we should use these tools. Should these tools be built? And what trade-offs are we making when we invite them into our spaces? And so can we have not just kind of a consumptive role around technology, but how do we really think about how it supports and engaged learning, relationships, and perhaps what things are we giving up when we bring these into our space, whether we talk about our own privacy, agency, and other issues. Yes.
Does anybody have any questions before you go to the next, hopefully fun activity?
All right, so we are trying to blend both the analog and digital worlds. So right now, if you have a sheet of paper, if you can write bot on one side, B-O-T, and not bots on the other side. So one of the things that kind of in our journey of finding out more about AI and humanity and education and ethics was looking at what was already happening. And so I came across this piece about what if a love poem was written by a robot? And I was like, I could discern what that is. False. So we are now going to put you all at the test to determine whether these samples are written by a bot or not a bot. So this is a poetry challenge. While we still have a hold on the spoken word, can you tell the difference? Is everybody ready?
Yes.
Little thumbs up. Yes. Okay. Bot or not bot? So if we post our answers.
I'm going for bot.
You're going for bot.
I think so, yes. You may not be able to read this. It's not very big. I think it was written by a machine.
All right.
Me too.
Everybody else thinks it was. Okay.
I'm on the bot side too.
I said human.
Oh, I'm sorry, we don't
It was
recognize
written by him.
I said human too.
You said not or human. You are correct.
Yes.
Human. What was the giveaway for those of you who said it was human?
There was no period at the end of every word.
You know, what's
think-
really interesting about, like, often what is the humanness of us is our irregularity.
Yeah.
Like what we try to
Yeah.
replicate is like a kind of standardization or here, but it's actually our irregularity that, an inconsistency that actually makes us human.
That came through hearing it as opposed to reading it too. I think that I already had it as not, but hearing you read it actually confirmed it. And then actually the word damned, that for me seemed to
Oh,
indicate
that's interesting.
that the computer probably wouldn't do that.
Huh.
I could be wrong though.
And for me, it was the feeling started to kick in with,
Mhm.
I walked those mornings to the hospital, eyes downcast, sweating, breathing in the fumes, that I started to feel something that
Mhm.
was, and I thought, that had
I connected with the emotion of it too. Yeah.
I went with robot, even though that phrase, that one phrase, breathing in, seems human to me. And it seemed human all along, but I don't know. I guess I don't, you know what, I guess I wonder what that shows. What, you know, what a machine could have written it. Isn't that a reasonable conclusion to draw?
I think it's funny, the idea that a computer wouldn't swear. Is that the claim? That I don't know who said that. Was that your claim?
That was not my claim, but that jumped out for me when I read it. That
What's the rationale?
I don't know.
I think
Right.
I want to hear
Gut.
more.
It's the gut sense, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So the part that kicked in the human was the lines about breathing the fuse of vast Columbus traffic. Just that little phrase brought out a local
Yeah.
situation that seemed human, seemed out of someone's life,
And then connecting mother to it. I don't know.
not from an algorithm.
Yes. Right. And that, like, what does place mean to a human versus, you know, kind of the geographical location and coordinates of place that machines might understand. All right. Our next,
Here's the next one.
Uh-oh.
bots or not bots?
Going all the way bot. I'm picking everything's a bot. Just have to have a strategy. And if you have a strategy, does that make it more or less human? I mean, you would think that a machine would have an explainable, a recognizable rationale, but maybe that's just what humans have.
Yeah, well, we're going to have a lot of interesting conversations about algorithms because when they get out in the wild, they are not understood about how they actually work. And kind of what are our own algorithms. But if you said bots,
Yay!
2 for 2.
Yeah.
sonnet number 3. Bots or not bots?
Everything's a bot. I'm going, even though I don't think so, I'm going with bot anyway. It's a 50-50.
This time I'm not, I'm
I
not
think
buying.
that one's, I'd say that one, if I hadn't already said I was going all the way bot, I'd pick human. But I'm sticking with my strategy.
Tom's actually posted the poet.
That's me 30 years ago.
Wow.
Ah, that's awesome.
Not a bot.
Not bots.
Not bots.
Yeah.
How are we
There's
doing?
something about this that makes it not bottish. I don't know what it is, but it's just, I don't know. It's a process observed, and you can I think I can see a human in that. I don't know, but I don't know what that means anyway. So, but that's what I thought when I heard you reading it.
Well, it says thumb pot of life. Like, what is a thumb pot of life? I
It's a
don't know.
plant. It's a small. It's like one of those things that you have plantlings in. It's
Yeah.
This is for me anyway. This is very concrete. This is very specific.
It reminds me about what's going to happen in a couple of months around here is the daffodils.
Spring coming back. Yeah, exactly. It's,
Yeah, they'll start
it's
poking
a little,
their way.
it's a little seedling poking up through there. That's what it is.
Yeah, right.
That doesn't mean it couldn't be written by a machine, though, does it? I mean, it could still be written by a machine.
That's interesting.
Yes. A byproduct of participating in the Grapple series is now paranoia.
Can I? Would it be fair to? I mean, one of the bot one did have authors attached to the algorithm that created it. Did it not?
That's right. Yeah.
And the not bot ones were written by simple machines, but they use machines too. I'm just feeling like the opposition there is not necessary sometimes. Like how, just because we use machines doesn't mean we're not human. It's just a question that's percolating for me as we're doing this.
Yeah, something to hold.
So isn't it a question about whether a human is utilizing a machine or whether the machine is the whole driver of the operation?
There's always a human at the end of it, theoretically, if they wrote the algorithm that then produced the poem.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and also though, on the other side, we're often not aware of the machines we're using when we think we're just being human, right?
Yeah. We went to an interesting, I appreciate the provocation, Paul. We went to an interesting talk by Louis Chudi Sakai, and he said the first time where man actually merges with machine is when he brought the watch, when the watch was created, that we began to kind of align ourselves. And yes, which just blew my mind. But so, what do we think of as technology, and where do we think of what our relationship is with it? So thank you for that.
I was just going to respond to Paul's first thing, which is kind of interesting, which I hadn't thought about, particularly this activity, that, the poem that was created by the bot was probably culled from human writings. I think that's what you're trying to say, Paul, right? That it wasn't just a machine that pulled it out of code, right? It must have
and humans wrote the code too. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Good point.
All right, here's the last one that we'll do together. Strumpet of Joy was my original screen name.
Everything's a bot.
Everything's Fire Festival.
Yes. All right, what do we say? Tom taking credit from 30 years ago.
When I flunked out of college.
Yes.
Oh, it's a human.
Wow.
Strumpet. I need to look up.
So what's a strumpet of joy, Tom?
A strumpet of joy? That's something that needs to be pondered. Warm spring mornings when you feel that joy, when the sun comes on you and the snow is melting, and then it starts to rain, and you said that's a strumpet.
Well,
You had to ask, Christina. You had to ask.
Sorry.
and
Thank you for asking.
Nice answer.
So this was when we started this journey of looking at AI, and it's interesting. We started this conversation of looking at the video and reading the articles, and we too were in this interesting challenge where it's you understand the words individually and not collectively, and then words are used synonymously. AI, machine learning, all these things. And are we talking about the same thing? And really appreciate this quote by Orwell. It says, the slovenliness of our language makes it easy for us to have foolish thoughts.
Yeah. And it also goes back to the video everybody watched, and some people still aren't sure what those words mean together, and some people find like, oh, okay, I get it. But we don't really think carefully about the words we use. We might use things interchangeably, and our words limit how much we can convey to each other about meaning. And so kind of thinking through the words used and thrown about in AI specifically, like machine learning and deep learning and neural networks. What do those mean? You might know what a neural network is in the human body, but you might not necessarily know what it translates to in a machine and an algorithm. So there's a lot of words and jargon that in different fields they throw at you, and kind of unpacking what those words mean. So entry point into us kind of grappling with what AI is.
In our early group, there were a lot of questions, and the idea was what questions come up for us as we're looking at this. And a question that came up is, should we treat humans more like robots or more robots more like humans? And in that kind of wrestling and grappling early on, we also began to realize, where is language an invitation and where does it shut off? And sometimes if really we're talking about the, wrestling with the nature of humanity and what it means for us to be humans and be in community. But as soon as you use certain words or language, people are like, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that. I can't talk about that. But we all can talk about what it means to be human in our particular bodies and orientations and histories. And where is the space to hold those conversations and learn in public and learn together?
Mm-hmm. So we want to do a private write about some of the readings we did and just the conversation we had just now from Bot Not Bot. I think that we have a screenshot of one of the passages in the Audrey Waters speech. There was this quote from Jacques Ellul from 1954. He says, "The human brain must be made to conform to the much more advanced brain of the machine. And education will no longer be an unpredictable and exciting adventure in human enlightenment, but an exercise in conformity and an apprenticeship to whatever gadgetry is useful in a technical world." I know we all have feelings about it, and Audrey Waters' piece, has a little analysis of that quote also. So wondering if you all want to take 2 minutes just to do a private write on your own. And then we're hoping we'll have maybe 5 minutes to break out into groups to discuss and write our comments. If there's any questions or thoughts that come to mind, all your feelings, you can write down. We're going to write also. So we're thinking of breaking up into groups. Christina's going to do the magic of breakout rooms in Zoom. It's going to be a trial experiment, but we'll have maybe 5 minutes to discuss it as a group. And we'll take notes in the shared Google Doc. I think Michelle, Laura, and I will be in separate groups, so we're going to try that.
Jessica's in the other one.
We put a section in the Google Doc, the shared one at the bottom. You'll see a space to write notes from your group. And the prompt is, what questions are emerging for you? So we want to really understand what you're grappling with. What are the questions that are coming up as you read this stuff, as you play the game Bot Not Bot? Yeah. That's the prompt. Simple.
You ready?
Ready. Thanks, Christina.
Okay.
All the data that gets collected about us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's my understanding. It gets taken and yeah, it becomes ads that get directed to us. That whole thing. And or it tries to influence us. And what I worry about is that agency gets taken out of that equation too fast. Agency of the people who are being influenced, right? So one question I have is, and it's much bigger than this sounds, but do targeted ads work? I mean, is there evidence that they work? No. I know people get targeted, but do people act because of that? So I wonder if there's a lot of worry about nothing. If I could put it that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's not the only way that our data is being used. For example, like Google Translate is actually getting better and better all the time. And it's getting better on the backs of human translators who Google's sucking the data from the human translators and then basically putting translators out of business because Google now has all their data in an AI system. So the data is like actually kind of being used to do a better job of tasks that people, because it can collectively gather all the people who are doing those tasks and get their data.
I think another scarier example than targeted ads, which I do believe really work, is like an AI that winds up only showing like CEO level jobs to male candidates, which is something that has happened. So it's like yeah, so a targeted ad might not seem so scary, but you also have to think too, like in terms of does it work, like does that person actually buy the thing that's advertised? Or you could also think of it like even if they don't buy the thing that's advertised targeted to them, they're still getting messaging about what they should be buying.
Yeah, but so what? That doesn't mean that they do it. That doesn't mean that they go vote for that person.
I think
Sometimes it does
pretty
mean that.
solid evidence
Well,
that
do we have evidence of that? That's what I want to know.
that bots have influenced electoral patterns, or that like
Yeah.
what? Yeah, I think there's some pretty strong evidence. Like if you take examples of Cambridge Analytica's campaigns.
I'm quite familiar with that campaign. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not convinced. I mean, they're convinced and they sell themselves by saying that they're effective, but I'm not convinced they're that effective.
I think Cambridge Analytica's early work, I think more than like the work in the US, is pretty clear that like a campaign that started with Cambridge Analytica, I forget, it's somewhere in the Caribbean, that it like very clearly led to a different outcome in the election than probably would otherwise happen. So
Shirley says Trinidad.
I'm convinced.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, even just my own experience, I do feel like if ads pop up for a different product that I just searched for, it does at least take away my attention, and then it'll be present of mind, and it keeps popping up everywhere I go on the internet. And that type of invasion wouldn't necessarily be there and wouldn't be a temptation if I wasn't, even if it's like a simple shoe advertisement, you know, it's prompting you to be more commercially active, I think.
You know, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's also that has now become a classic example of the dad who didn't know that his daughter was pregnant until Target sent ads for. Do you know this example? So the dad got up in arms saying like, Target, why are you advertising baby diapers and whatever to my 16-year-old daughter? I'm getting lost in the details here, but essentially he was up in arms and then apologized later because it turned out that Target knew that his daughter was pregnant before
he did.
So I think it has, I mean, that's just like a small example. I think it does have real.
Yeah. I had a different question of, you know, just reading the Audrey Waters quote and the quote, what she writes about the quote from Jacques Ellul, just that her fear is more that she wrote that humans will intellectually, emotionally, occupationally be reduced to machines. I think there's a Turing test that technologists use to understand how well their machines mimic human behavior. And that's basically kind of like the not bot game we played. It's the idea that can you fool humans into believing the chatbot or whatever it is they're building is a human. And part of that is with a lot of the tests that they currently do, they do trick people into believing that it's actually a human, but it's a robot. But I wonder if part of that is us also becoming very mechanized in how we communicate. So we may communicate more robotically. So are we actually programming ourselves
to communicate more efficiently using acronyms and LOLs and whatnot. And does that make it easier then to make us believe that a robot is a human?
Thank you so much for participating. I think our hope is that we will take up a specific topic in relation to AI and humanity each session, and that we'll do a number of interactive moves and then discussion. And that's, I think, our hope about this. But what I love about this very diverse and interesting group from across the country is I think that we each have resources and ideas and opportunities in our own spaces. And it would be so interesting if we were to bring these things kind of together on behalf of the National Writing Project Network so that we could all think more deeply about it. So I'm excited about that possibility, and just thank you so much for being with us tonight.